Hello, everybody. We're live from Los Angeles with very exciting news. This is your host, Young Brando, and we are going to talk about upcoming. We're going to talk about the upcoming AP 150 release. They have a new RD novelty coming our way, celebrating the 150th anniversary of the manufacture. And Rob Report made a doo-doo a few days back, and the images that leaked have already been making the rounds, but I have been able to tap into the resource, and I will be able to talk to you about what actually makes the new release, what are the distinctive things about it, beyond just the particular combination of the chronograph and the tourbillon, those two complications, which of course have a history in AP's catalog, going all the way back to the 30th anniversary of the Royal Oak itself. And we're going to talk about that. This is a very different approach, though, and it's something to be celebrated. I have previously talked about the tourbillon chronograph in the Royal Oak case as one of my favorite watches ever made by AP. And the only shortcoming that I could find about it, the only complaint I had about it, was literally the case size and the dimensions, and they took care of it all with this new release. But let's go right into it. I will pull up the picture, which you may have already seen, but the way I will talk about it is obviously going to be very different, much more nuanced, and obviously full of historical and horological detail. Now, what you see here is quite literally Audemars Piguet Royal Oak RD #5. So this is the latest novelty within the research and development series. The very last release was the RD4, the Code 1159 Universel, which was an ultra complicated watch that was offered in the Code 1159 case, and that was actually very well received to the extent that it won the GPHG, the Aiguille d'Or, in the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève in that particular year. That was about 2 years ago. Now, of course, AP is celebrating the 150th anniversary of the manufacture, and one of the distinctive marks of this particular release, of course, has something to do with that, and that is aesthetically marked, that is inscribed at 12 o'clock with a very with a signature that is at once maximalist and minimalist. We don't see the double branding that we have gotten used to with many AP releases, but there has been a shift towards just focusing on the signature. And, you know, AP had that actually in their marketing material decades ago, you know, the most prestigious of signatures or most prestigious of horological signatures or something like that. So it feels just right that they would put that front and center. And in this case, of course, like many 150th anniversary exclusive releases and the limited first runs of watches, they have rendered that script italicized in cursive and with a beautiful throwback font. We also see that the watch is has a dial that's a petite tapisserie dial, which immediately makes us think that this is quote unquote a jumbo, the 39 millimeter case size that they have made for quite a while now, exclusive to these sorts of special releases, including the current generation of the Jumbo 16202, but also, for example, in pieces like the RD number 3, right, which in a way is also a precursor to this release. The RD3 was the self-winding flying tourbillon, which is one of the complications in this watch, rendered, executed in a 39 millimeter jumbo extra thin case. That was released as 26670. It did have a petite tapisserie dial with Bleu Nuit Nuage 50, the classic Royal Oak blue dial that has been a feature, a distinctive signature of the design since its origination in 1972 with Jarre Argenta's original conception. So that is our second hint. That watch, the RD3, was, however, released in stainless steel. Here we have a piece that is actually in a different combination of metals. And for that, we merely have to focus right here. Now, we have already gotten a sense of the case dimensions and of the sleek and slim profile of the case from that side view. Now, when we focus on the bezel that frames the exhibition case back, we see two words, Titan and PD 500. Now, Titan is pretty self-explanatory. That's the French word for titanium. PD 500 is a little more confusing, perhaps, at first glance. Of course, PD stands for palladium, and 500 refers to the percentage of palladium in that particular alloy. However, AP itself does not actually call this alloy palladium or anything else but bulk metallic glass. This is the combination of materials. This is the conjugation of two different metals in a tone-on-tone expression that they have already used in a jumbo extra thin, in the 16202 XT in short. And when you see a case back picture of that piece right here, you'll see it says Titan for titanium and PD 500 for BMG, which is what they call bulk metallic glass. And it is, in fact, an alloy of 50% palladium and 50% other metals. And it is, again, a combination that they have used with the Royal Oak, specifically in this particular extra thin jumbo release, the 16202 XT. So in fact, the only thing I can't really give you at this point from the whole leak is the exact serial number. Beyond that, we have everything down, and we have just started. I have just begun to talk about this piece. Now we go back to the first look, to the originally leaked image. We can say that in large part, the case and integrated bracelet of the watch in that classic finish of contrasting satin brushed and mirror polished surfaces is rendered in titanium with the octagonal bezel, the tapering interlinks of the bracelet, pardon me, and seemingly also the pushers, the chronograph pushers, are rendered in BMG, in bulk metallic glass, AP's own alloy of 50% palladium, 50% mixed metals. We know from RD3 already that flying tourbillon has a cage that is rendered in titanium. And in fact, it has a lighter and thinner escapement, which of course grants this watch both some extra reliability, shock resistance, and energy management. The movement here is the caliber 8100, and it is altogether nearly 4 millimeters in thickness, even though it is made out of 379 individual components and has a jewel count of 44. Now, we are not yet done. Going back to the pushers, they're actually not only an aesthetic departure from the usual pushers that you see on a Royal Oak chronograph, they actually mark a technical difference as well. So it's not just an aesthetic change. Those pushers usually take after the shape of the crown, whereas here the pushers take after the rectangular shape of the interlinks, and they are in fact light touch pushers. And I will read a little bit from the article here. Clearly, they have had in mind something that responds to the technical age, the era of the smartphone, and apparently they were aiming at a similar tactile feel of a smartphone. Of course, we're not talking about the touch screens here, but maybe the feel, the operating experience is closer to the buttons on the side of your iPhone that you use to adjust the volume, right? Ever since the 1970s, developments in serial production and waterproofing of chronographs meant that the force required to engage a chronograph pusher increased to roughly 1.5 kilogram along at travel, right? And this is the term for the distance the button has to move. And you will see of 1 millimeter or more. And you'll see already that those rectangular pushers, compared to the earlier Royal Oak chronograph pushers, which more or less look like the crown or have a similar look to the crown, this in fact shortens that distance to move, and the shape, it doesn't only look like the interlinks of the bracelet, it also looks like those volume buttons on the side of your iPhone. It's quite remarkable. So in fact, the shape of the chronograph pushers, we realize, is not only an aesthetic change, but in fact something that AP quietly worked on to implement something that requires basically a fifth of the force that their usual chronographs require to engage the chronograph, to push the button. Gillo Papi, AP's director of watchmaking and design, watchmaking design rather, aimed to reduce the figure to just 300 grams of force. So from 1,500 to 300 grams of force along a travel of 0.3 millimeters, which again is about the same amount of pressure that you require to adjust the volume of an iPhone. Now, you know, certain mechanical aficionados, and that group might include me. I have not actually engaged hands-on with this chronograph, so I can't tell for sure. You might miss that particular haptic feel of a chronograph button. Like Alan und Söhne is very famous in implementing specifically that kind of feel for their pushers, whether we're talking about date correctors or chronograph pushers. This is going in the opposite direction. This is going, in fact, in a direction that's diametrically opposite. Now we are actually going back to the movement to talk about it in detail. Because it is a very special movement indeed. We have barely scratched the surface, and as you can see, there are already so many interesting details. Of course, the case back, we have already marveled. It gave us the combination of materials that was used: titanium and BMG, titanium and bulk metallic glass. It has the 150th anniversary logo, and it marks this edition as one of 150 pieces, meaning that this is, in essence, a limited edition. But don't fret. Think of the previous RD3, which has directly translated into the product line, right, where you have a 41 millimeter extra thin tourbillon, for example, which is 26,530, for example, is a good instance of that. You also have a 37 millimeter version of that same self-winding flying tourbillon movement, ultra-thin movement, in 37 millimeters, and that is the 26,660, right? So you had first the 26,670, which was the RD3, Research and Development Chapter 3, the classic jumbo extra thin tourbillon. But as part of the 50th anniversary release cycle, which was only 3 years back, 2022, you got also the 41 millimeter version of that. And then you got, before the year even ended, the 37 millimeter version of that. So even though this is a limited edition, it is going to have a wide-ranging effect on the rest of the AP catalog. it is in fact going to have different versions of it soon enough, maybe not before the end of the year, but certainly within the next year or two, you will have different iterations of this movement within the catalog. And you can even say the same thing about the l'universel, right? In the sense that you have the new perpetual calendar movement that was a research development out of that attempt to produce an ultra complicated watch. Captain Kirk, no, they have not changed their logo to the cursive. That is something that they have used either exclusively limited editions, right? You know, where the run is exactly 150 pieces, or releases that they have made on the 150th anniversary. They have cursive for the first 150 examples, like the new 38 millimeter perpetual calendars is a great example of the latter. The earlier 150th anniversary open-worked perpetual calendar is a great example of the former, right? You know, where you have a limited edition to 150 pieces, you have the cursive, and then you have, for example, the new series of 38 millimeter Royal Oak perpetual calendars, which have the cursive script only for the first 150 examples, after which it switches back to the serif font. So this movement, even though, again, it uses the titanium cage and the modern escapement of the RD3, is a thing of its own. It is not only self-winding, it is not only an automatic movement, it also bears a peripheral rotor. Its oscillating weight basically travels around the base of the movement, which has, pardon me, two benefits, of course. One, since we are at the same level as the base plates of the movement, which, as you see here, are open worked, you have the ability to make the movement that much thinner. And we did say the movement altogether is only 4 millimeters in thickness. And of course, the extra joy we get from this is the full view of the movement, of the chronograph movement. And that's also thanks, of course, to the open worked bridges as well, which is here a very modern treatment and has this kind of shades of gray element to it, which gives it a sense of depth and an intensified three-dimensionality, right? You know, you have the at the base kind of an anthracite gray color, whereas the open work bridges are satinized against that seemingly media blasted base of the movement. Another thing I want to add here, since I have mentioned the legacy of this complication, I want to quickly show you what AP had in 2003. This was the reference 25977 stainless steel. The Royal Oak Tourbillon chronograph that was released on the 30th anniversary of the design, of the Jarrah design in 2003. I've already mentioned that it was, however, 44 millimeters in diameter. And it was almost 13 millimeters in thickness. Whereas here, you probably have you have a movement that's about 4 millimeters in thickness, and probably a watch that is somewhere around 9 to 10 millimeters in thickness, I would say. Can be even closer to 9 than 10, but keep in mind that the Tourbillon RD3 was 8.1, and you have a chronograph movement on top of that. However, you also have a peripheral rotor rather than a full rotor. Here, the movement was actually the legacy caliber, a movement that we know elsewhere as CH27, Lemania, Omega 321, or Lemania 2220, which here is combined with Tourbillon. This is the legacy of this particular combination of complications for AP in a Royal Oak cage. But what they have cooked up with this new release is much more impressive, a much lighter titanium tourbillon cage, a flying tourbillon, meaning that it offers you, in fact, a more unimpeded aesthetic enjoyment of the revolution. It's much harder to execute a flying tourbillon where you don't have that front bridge. Hi, Oz. Nice to see you, man. Please hit the like button, guys. I put a lot of work into this, both in terms of delving into the historical research, but also trying to enrich this. Now, I'm not going to derail our conversation too much away from this particular piece, but you know, when it comes to the particular combination of a self-winding chronograph and flying tourbillon, they already had, for example, a code 1159 this way. But once again, this is not a repeat movement. This is a new research and development watch that gives us something entirely new. The caliber 8100 is new and so far exclusive about this release. So an entirely new movement that promises further developments along similar lines. And obviously, future releases, if and when they happen, probably won't have the same combination of materials. So the titanium BMG, titanium bulk metallic glass, might remain exclusive to this 150-piece limited run. But expect to see non-jumbo versions of this chronograph tourbillon in different parts of the Audemars Piguet catalog and in different Royal Oak cases, be it 37 millimeter or 41 millimeter, as we have seen previously. Now, the caliber 8100 also has a new reset mechanism, right? So it's not only the lighter touch of the pushers, but the reset mechanism itself that is reimagined. And titanium, again, is not only an aesthetic aspect of this watch and the source of its lightweight nature. Instead of the typical hammer and heart shaped reset system, this employs a patented rack and pinion design for the resets. The energy stored in the rack is used to return the titanium chronograph hand to zero in a near instantaneous retrograde motion when you reset it. So we figure that, in fact, the chronograph hand that we were looking at earlier from the side view, from the profile view, that hand is actually this very slender hand that is stacked above the RM minute hands. The centrally deployed chronograph hand is from titanium, and thanks to a new reset mechanism that uses a rack and pinion design rather than a heart-shaped system, it's almost an instantaneous retrograde mission and motion where you reset the seconds. The chronograph minutes that you already see here as well at 9 o'clock here, roughly speaking, that has an instantaneous jump at the top of each minute. And of course, like AP's, like many other examples of the self-winding chronograph in AP's modern line, it has a flyback function. So in fact, the pusher you have at about 4 o'clock is your flyback/reset button. You use the pusher at 2 o'clock to start. You don't have to then stop, reset, and start, but you can simply press the pusher at 4 o'clock for that instantaneous, almost instantaneous reset mechanism with the titanium chronograph hand, and the chronograph will continue, which will help you time 2 events in quick succession, right? That's the joy, and that's the functionality of a flyback chronograph. We mentioned already that the flying tourbillon features the high amplitude titanium cage mechanism with the lighter and thinner escapement that they previously used in the RD number 3 from 2022. And everything is kept at 4 millimeters of thickness. That's just the movement. I'm assuming the thickness of the watch overall is probably around 9 millimeters. And going back also again to the aesthetics of the watch, we can immediately recognize that this is a jumbo, 39 millimeters in diameter, with a petite tapisserie dial, which is a throwback to the original 1972 Bleu Nuit Nuage 50. Cursive script, which marks it as a 150th anniversary release. Bathtub style hands and markers, which again ties it back to the original jumbo aesthetic. But of course, you have the titanium tourbillon cage at 6, a 12-hour counter at 3, and at 9 o'clock, a 30-minute totalizer with a special titanium centrally deployed chronograph hand, which in combination with the light touch chronograph pushers announces and embodies a quick reset mechanism that uses a rack and pinion system instead of a heart-shaped can. Amazing. So titanium, bulk metallic glass, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Chronograph Tourbillon RD number 5. It is going to be 150 pieces of a limited edition. And it announces not only a single novelty, a single new release, but a number of developments that we might see soon enough in the rest of the AP catalog. Titanium tourbillon cage, the rack and pinion system for the zero reset mechanism, open worked chronograph bridge, a new movement caliber 8100, something quite worthy and something that puts us back to the horological conversation.